Here, Parshat Bo. Now we're already at Bet Shvat, but today was Rosh Chodesh, and we hope that this month Shvat will be a Chodesh of Shenishma B'Pesorot Tovot.
Amen.
And we've already had good news today from seeing some hostages be released. May we continue to see some great things this month. And the shir should be Ilu Nishmat, my father Rav Avram ben Eliezer, and also who? Tom?
Tom is Ariel ben Avram Yehuda.
Ariel ben Avram Yehuda, who passed away during last week's shir, and this week today is probably the last day of the shiva or the last day of the first week. And he was a very big part of this year in the earliest days, and he was a very important person in the overall community of the Shirat David community. So may the learning that we have be in the schut, and may continue to be a melis yosher for all of us. Person had a very unique upbringing and came to Efrat and came to Yiddishkeit in Eretz Yisrael in a great way, and he really brought a lot of amazing things. So B'ezrat Hashem, the learning tonight and the learning in general should be in his Ilu Neshama. Speaking of Ilu Neshama, B'ezrat Hashem, in just about 2 weeks from now, we will be hosting on Tuesday night, February 11th. We'll be hosting Charles or Shaul. Will be coming back to Israel to host the annual Hilulah of the Rabbi Abu Chatzera. Wow. And we'll be B'ezrat Hashem make sure everyone comes. It's around 8 o'clock, I believe, in Shirat David. So in this week's parsha, we know that there are the last three of the Makot, and one of the, I guess we could say, the highlights of the Makot, besides Makat Becharot, which is a very powerful piece, but that is going to be, we're going to focus on Makat Becharot, but before that happens, we have Arba and Choshech, and during that time, Arba and Choshech, we obviously know that there were, in Arba, the locusts wipe out that which wasn't taken out in the Arov, and then we have Choshech, which we know during that time of Choshech, Bnei Israel were able to take or borrow, whatever you want to call it. They took the jewelry as they promised Abraham, or as Hashem promised Abraham, that they would Yitzei B'Ruchush Gadol. And finally, we have the big Makat Becharot, which is the highlight of this week's parsha, if you will. And in the Zera Shimshon, he focuses on the first part of the Makkah, and it's in the Revi, the Aliyah Revi'it, Parak Yud Aleph, Pasuk Dalet. It says it's a rather famous drash, but the background of the drush that we most know is relatively famous, and then what we'll do, the Zera Shimshon adds another layer to it to really make it even more impressive. So it says, "Vayomer Moshe Ko Amar Adonai." So Moshe says to, we think it, but Moshe is talking to Paro, and it says, "Kachatzot halayla ani yotzei betoch Mitzrayim," and he's announcing the fact that he's giving a warning to Paro. He's giving a warning to Paro and to the Mitzrim that there's going to be a Makkah. We haven't opened this book yet. And at that moment, Moshe says that around Chatzot, Kachatzot, right? Most people translate Kachatzot as around Chatzot, let's call it midnight for argument's sake, right? And then he describes the entire Makkah. And the Rashi already says Kechilik v'alayla, and he says that Kachatzot, right? But he says it's around Chatzot, and we know already that right before and then right afterwards, when the actual Makkah takes place, it says B'chatzot halayla. The actual Makkah took place B'chatzot halayla, and that means that Hashem tells Moshe that it's going to happen exactly at midnight. And Moshe, when he tells over the Makkah, he says, Ka chatzot, around chatzot. So the question is a relatively famous question as to why we say, why does Moshe change his opinion or change the words of Hashem? And that's where we're going to start from the Zera Shimshon, exactly at that point. So we're at Drush Gimel, the third Drush of Parshat Bo. In the Hebrew edition, it is on page Taf Reish Kaf, Taf Reish Kuf, or Taf Reish Kaf, Taf Reish Kaf. That's 520, if you will. And right, Taf Reish 400, right, Reish is, Kuf is 200, 620, sorry. You see it? Parshat Bo, Drush Gimel. And in the English on the article, it's page 467. So it says, Ko amar Hashem kachatzot alayla. So it says that the Makkah is going to. Hashem says it's going to take around midnight. He's going to send his Makkah bechorot. And the Gemara in Brachot says, "Amru Chazal, the Moshe amar kachatzot v'lo amar bachatzot kadei shelo yitu itztagninei paro v'yamru Moshe badayu." So the Gemara in Brachot, it's relatively early in the Gemara. It says that Moshe said around chatzot, so that the astrologers of Paro would not say that he is a liar. What does that mean? Because they're looking at their clocks, and they're saying Hashem says it's going to happen at exactly Chatzot, and Moshe says it's going to be around Chatzot. So what is he waiting for? He's going to change his words. Why does he want to change his words? Because if he says it's going to happen exactly at Chatzot, what's going to happen? If they don't have clocks or whatever, but they have 1 minute off, 1 minute here, 1 minute there, what's going to happen? Well, automatically the astrologers are going to say, oh, Moshe was just kidding around. He doesn't really know. He's not really this, all-encompassing kind of person. He doesn't really know. So, Makshim Olam, and he said, Zera Shimshon asks he said many people raise a very similar question. He says, Mikol makom Moshe hayalo lomar belashon shamar lo kadosh baruch hu, o lo hayalo lomar ko amar Hashem lo vayomer Moshe kachatzot alayla. Right? So he says very good question. He asks a very simple question. Actually, he says either you say exactly what Hashem says, which would be the right thing to do, or you don't say Hashem said this. Right? When you're either you say Hashem said exactly this. I mean Hashem said bachatzot alayla. Right? Either you say that, or you don't quote Hashem and say, it's Makkah is going to happen tonight. That's what he's asking. He's not the only person that asked it.
You mean let everything fall out as it may.
Right, exactly. In other words, if you're really going to say, otherwise what happens is you're putting yourself into a situation. He's asking a couple. Yeah, that's one question, and then he says, right? You have to give Moshe a little bit of, he's got a little bit of credibility behind him. He's proven himself correct in the last 9 makot, right? It's every one of the makot he's given the introduction, or whatever introduction he's given, is exactly happened. So why would he say all of a sudden now, out of all the makot, now he's a liar, or now he's someone who's not telling us the truth? Like, why would the Mitzvim even think? Why would they think that at all? Right? Zera Shimshon is asking a very good question. He says Moshe has, like what they call today, street cred, right? He's proven himself. He's got the proof, right? Whether you say Hashem said it or not, we've got the proof. And if we have the proof, then why do we have to say all of a sudden now Moshe is nervous about the fact that maybe, something's not right? Why do we have to even worry about that? He's got 9 makot in his bag that say, hey, I know what I'm talking about. That's question number 2. ועוד, מה נפקא מיני להצטגנין בין רגע לרגע שכל כך היו מקפידים אם תהיה אותו רגע או ממש או לא. כיוון שבא באותו הלילה, מה ודאי שייך כאן? So he says, and also, who cares what, the Gemara says, it says from the word at midnight, and he changes to about midnight, he says, what's the big deal? He asked the question, he says, what's the difference? Why should there be a difference to the astrologers, whether they say 1 moment here, 1 moment there, right? If they were they really so makbid on the time, right? At the end of the day, it happened, right? The makkah happened. Who cares? Bachatzot, kachatzot. At the end of the day, what's the big difference?
It might have been an issue in the beginning, but
right, exactly. But at the end of the day, the makkah happens. It doesn't make a difference when it happened, right? No one's going to remember the makkah happened at 12 or 12:01. The makkah happens. It doesn't make a difference at that point, right? I mean, based on what happened, when we know what's happening in the makkah, the exact timing of it is almost irrelevant. So who cares, right? That's the question number 3. And right, he says, like, how's it fitting for the Egyptians to call Moshe a liar if as just because their estimation was wrong, meaning my time was not synchronized with their time? Okay, big deal. That Makkah happens. No one's going to remember that. What they're going to remember is the Makkah. So who cares?
Yeah,
right?
but the Mitzrayim hang on those
No,
little
so that
details.
you're very good.
And they'll say, look, he was wrong.
Right.
It didn't happen at 12 midnight. It happened at 10 after 12.
Right, so-
and they'll say,
so that's-
see, he was wrong.
So that's a very
That's
good
what they
question.
do.
You see this in modern critics.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. The critics are right. The critics don't go away. So now the other question, which I think to me is one of the strongest questions, is the question as follows: that even to avoid being called a liar by the Egyptian astrologers, Moshe says he changes his words. We know that. And his final question, Zera Shimshon asks the following thing, which is more important to me. This question is more valuable or more, it's a stronger question than all the other questions. He says, it's difficult to understand. V'od sheho'il shamakai tav chatzit alayla mamash u'Moshe amar kachatzot Yisrael atzmam yiru kach k'mo she'ktuv b'Sefer HaZohar. So he quotes the Zohar. So obviously I'm not going to start arguing with the Zohar here, but he says what he says is, which is a great question, is how it's not forget about what the Mitzrayim are going to say. What are Bnei Israel? They're about to go out of Mitzrayim. They have a leader that says, follow me. I'm taking you out of Mitzrayim. And all of a sudden, they said, trust Hashem. Right? This whole plan is that Moshe gets up, gives a lot of speeches, gets them rallied up, and he says, Hashem is going to take you out. Hashem's going to take you out. This is what Hashem told me to do. Etc. Etc. And all of what he said is, Hashem told me to do this, but I'm telling you it's actually going to happen this way. So he changes the words of Hashem. What does that look like in the eyes of Bnei Israel?
Hold on a minute. They weren't privy to the private conversation. They didn't know what Hashem told them exactly.
It says, I would agree with you. However, it says, "Vayomer Moshe Ko Amar Hashem."
Oh, I missed the part.
So it says, you were absolutely right.
Omar Hashem, he said it to Bnei Yisrael.
Or to either way, whether he said it to Paro or to Bnei Israel, either way, he's saying it to someone. That's one of the questions. Like it also doesn't say who he's saying it to.
But the Yidden don't know. He's saying Kachotza Laila, right? That's right.
He says around Chazor, but
But they don't know. He told them exactly.
But the point is, what does it look like in the eyes of in a PR?
They don't know.
They don't. But he
They
said,
haven't seen Rashi yet.
No, but it says Ko Amar Hashem. Hashem said this to him.
But it wasn't a lie. He came out exactly Kachatos.
Hold on. So now we're going to get to that. But you're very
I don't
good.
hear the question.
The question is very good. What's the
I
question?
don't hear the question.
The question is very simple. The question says, Hashem told me at midnight.
Right. No, Hashem told me Kachatzos.
No, kachatzot. No, Hashem. This is Moshe saying that Hashem said around midnight.
Right.
Moshe, but Moshe, what did Hashem actually tell him?
But he didn't tell them that. The question doesn't get off the ground. They don't know that he told them exactly. He said Hashem told me Kachatzos. So what's the time that Bnei Yisrael going to have? Because they didn't hear exactly a Chatzos. There's no question.
I don't necessarily agree. But okay.
Where's the question? Explain it to me.
Very simple.
How do they know? What did they hear from Moshe Rabbeinu?
They heard from Moshe Rabbeinu, but kachatzot.
Zeo, what does that mean? Around. And what came out? Was it around? Yes, it was around.
No, but the point is, what I'm thinking, what I think we're trying to get to the point here, and this is what the Zera Shimshon is saying, I believe, is that Moshe's not being honest.
But they don't know that.
I think
Only we know that. We have the Rashi.
I know, but
they don't know that.
I
That's
believe,
my point.
but all the more so. You're saying you're changing the words of Hashem?
What are you talking about? The question, am I wrong in understanding his question? He's saying, what are the Bnei Yisrael going to think?
Yeah, what are Bnei Yisrael going to think?
But they have nothing to base it on other than the chatzos.
Well,
the question doesn't get started.
I believe it says. I think it does. So look, again, that's what it is. Again, he makes himself potentially calling himself potentially. Forget it. You don't argue it. You don't. This is what the Zohar says. I'm just quoting it. Okay.
Well,
anyway,
by the way, I'm sorry. Where are you?
Drush Gimel.
I know, but where?
Right at the beginning, towards the beginning. No, it says v'od shohil shamaka gimel v'od. Yeah. Okay. So now, before in a little introduction, even with whether we understand or don't understand the various questions, there are 4 questions. One question is, if Hashem actually said if Hashem said what He said, then you should have said, Hashem said exactly what I said. In other words, you should have said exactly what Hashem said. And if he's talking to the Mitzrayim, he should have said, Hashem told me this, and then you should be exactly right. Okay? Or don't say that Hashem told me, then you can say whatever you want. Then there's no problem. That's question number one. Question two is, he did come with a little bit of proof behind him, like he has some credibility behind him. And if he has credibility behind him, he shouldn't even be worried what the other people say. At the end of the day, he has 9 makot to prove that he was right, regardless of whether it was exactly at Chatzot or around Chatzot. It's regardless of that fact, because at the end of the day, he's proven himself, so he shouldn't have to worry about it, right? And that's number 2. Number 3 is, what does it really make a difference to the Tzdaginim, I mean the astrologers, whether they go one way or the other way? At the end of the day, it happened. And no one's going to remember what time, 12:00, 12:01, at the end of the day, they're going to remember the Makkah.
It's not like they're duplicating right in the beginning.
Right, exactly. Exactly, because at the last 3, they don't even duplicate it at all. And then the last question, whether we agree or not, at the end of the day, is what is Bnei Israel going to think about this? What are they going to think about it? I hear your point. By the way, it's not a bad question, because at the end of the day, we don't actually know. No one knows the conversation that Hashem had with Moshe. So we could say is, well, who's to say you're wrong, right? At the end of the day, we don't know what was actually said, and if we don't know what was said, so the fact that Moshe said, Hashem told me this, the Bnei Israel are going to believe it because Moshe is their leader. But again, there is something to be said is he, moving, the fact is that maybe he didn't say it, he bends the truth, he's being flexible with the truth, whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, it's not necessarily being the most honest way to say it, because he didn't actually hear that word from Hashem. Okay, now, in order to understand the next piece of the next piece of the Zera Shimshon, I'm going to bring a little bit of an extra introduction. So in order to understand it, because otherwise the first part of it is a little confusing. But in general, and I'll just kind of go over it quickly because it's not that difficult. But it's at the end of the day, there are the Gemara in Brachot, Shabbat, Eruvin mentioned many times that there are, and Rashi mentions it in those Gemarot as well, that there are 7 celestial bodies that control the world. Okay, we know them as, what we would call them as Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, right?
They're all lined up now.
Okay, there we
Venus.
go. Right, Venus, right?
I know that, right?
Mars, the Sun, Venus, the Mercury, and the Moon. Okay, so they're all 7 of them, and they basically go and they repeat themselves every day of the 7 days a week. They have it cycled. They're 7 for every hour of the day. One of those is in control, if you will. They're strong. And so basically every 24 hours, you have 3 and a little bit of that rotation. Okay? Just to give you a little bring, how does it come into practicality? And this is, I'll explain it this way. The Magen Avram, okay, so I'll just give you an example. The Magen Avram says that on Friday night, people should not, and by the way, the Baal HaTanya says it as well. He actually says it as a Yesh Omrim. The Baal HaTanya says it as a Yesh Omrim. We shouldn't. I mean, some people don't. And the Chabadnikim of today are very strict not to make Kiddush the first hour of Shabbat. Very strict about it.
Because of Mars.
The Mars, exactly. Ma'adim. Ma'adim is considered a bad luck time. And they don't make Shabbat. To the fact to the fact that sometimes you'll see Chabadnikim wait after shul. They'll wait until the hour is over so that they can make Kiddush.
It's brought in Shulchan Aruch.
Yes, I'm saying, I'm quoting the Magen Avraham. I'm not quoting, I'm saying.
If you go to Shirat David, you've never got to tell them.
Right, exactly. So again, so that is that by the way. So that's a good point. So anyway, so it's not. We should always the Maharil, the Tshuvot Maharil, which came obviously before the Magen Avraham. He says that you should make Kiddush before night, because at the beginning of the first hour of Shabbat and the end of Shishi, he says V'sof Yom Shishi hu Mazal Tzedek. Mazal Tzedek is the right time. Ma'adim is not considered a very strong time in general. The Machatzit Shekel actually says, and you shouldn't make the first hour of Shabbat. The Machatzit Shekel also, quite a good source, says therefore we have to do is that we shouldn't make Kiddush at that first hour for that reason. Like I said, the Chabadnikim that I know are very strict about it. Most people are not as strict about it, to the best of my knowledge. But like you said, if we go to a longer davening, you have less of a problem. So one point, or at least one advantage of going to a longer davening. So the other thing that's important to know is, when was Makat Bechorot? What day of the week?
It's Shabbat.
No. When did Yetziat Yisrael take place?
Thursday night.
Thursday night. So when did Makat Bechorot happen?
I don't know why.
when the Makah Bechorot happened to
Must have
have
been Thursday night.
no, Wednesday night. It had to be Wednesday. It had to be the night
The night
before.
before.
It was the night before. Okay, so it was Wednesday night. So it was Wednesday night. This, by the way, that's a Gemara in Shabbos. It says that it was on Wednesday night. It wasn't me. I'm asking the question, but it's there. Anyway, so the first night.
Why was that whole day? It wasn't Paro going around.
No, but it says night. What do you mean? It wasn't a whole day.
What, he sent them out that
He sent them
morning?
out. That was Wednesday morning, and then Wednesday night was the actual Makkah, and Thursday morning.
Thursday morning is when he sent them out.
Right,
Okay,
Thursday,
yeah, great.
okay. Now, so we have here is, basically to understand, that's like a little bit of a quick introduction of the celestial bodies, not that I understand what's going on as much, but we'll just make the introduction so we can a little bit understand what he's about to say, and then we'll get to answer some of his questions. Yeah, the crux of it, good. So he says like this, V'yesh lomar, she'yadua she'lefi seder ha'ma'alot, shatzam chanchal, which is like Rashi Tevot, shatzam chanchal is Shabtai, which is Saturn, Tzedek is Jupiter, Ma'adim, Chama, Noga, Kochav, Levana. That's the order. And basically, the Mem is the Ma'adim, which is the one, B'chatzi alayla shel Makat Bechorot, right? That it merges, what happens is that we're at the middle of the night of the Makat Bechorot, Hayam Meshamesh Kochav Tzedek B'shah Shishit, Dahani B'shah Achrona shel Chatzi alayla. Right? V'kochav Ma'adim B'shah Shvi'it. And the planet, and Mars was the hour, right, which follows, there's Jupiter first and then Mars after. Now why is this important? He's going to get to it right now. If let's say it was midnight, okay, just for argument's sake it was midnight. So from 11 to 12, Jupiter is in control, and Jupiter is known as a good, auspicious time. And from 12 to 1, Mars is in control. I'm using 12 to 1. I'm using exact hours just to make it a little easier. It's obviously shows maniot. But Mars is in control from 12 to 1. And Mars is known as a less than positive opportune time for most things, as proven by the fact that it comes down to halacha, where people say not to make kiddush during that time, which you would think that would be like, it's Shabbos, right?
But how does that coincide? Did you say?
Well, no, yeah, you might say you should make kiddush during the time, right? But he's yeah, but this is not Chabad. This is the Magen Avram. Like this is not. I'm saying it's not quoted here. I'm just telling you that the Magen Avram says it's not even like some Chamsi.
With the first hour of Shabbat.
No, like I said, the cycle is a 7-hour cycle. So every 7 hours of it's a seven celestial body cycle in 24 hours. So every 7th hour it turns, right? So you have 7 and then 14, 20, 21, 24. So then in other words, what happens is the cycle continues and you end up having like 3 and like a third, if you will, of the cycle happening.
Got it.
Okay, so that's a little bit of introduction. Sharei Yisrael Yatzu Mitzrayim B'Yom Chamishi. We know that the Makat Bechorot took place on Wednesday night because Bnei Yisrael left Mitzrayim on Thursday night, like you said. Very good. Kedamin b'Shabbat Perik Rabbi Akiva, which is Daf Pei Zayin, and it says that the Makat Bechorot took place the night before the Jewish, before Yetziat Mitzrayim. Okay, now that we have all this in a little bit of a place, now he says, and now he's going to get to his answers. Now he says, had Makat Bechorot occurred a moment before Chatzot, right? Which let's say, for the argument's sake, is for like we said, an example if Chatzot is at 12 exactly. So let's at some point, 11:58, 11:59, let's just say for argument's sake, if it would have taken place then, that's the time when Jupiter has its influence, right? What would right? It wouldn't be such a miracle that Bnei Yisrael would be rescued. Why? Because that's an auspicious time. We know Jupiter is a great time. Okay, so he says, therefore, right? Raki Karnesh Ayushem Kamitzrim. Rather, the only miracle would have been that what Bnei Yisrael, that the Egyptians were getting a makkah, right? So it's the nes that they were being redeemed, or they were taken out of Mitzrayim. Not such a big deal, because why? What's the Mitzri going to say? Oh, it's the right time of the day. So big deal. So the fact that they got taken out, okay, so we got hit, but it's not a nace that they got taken out, right? That's one thing. Afal pisha kochav yatov, right? In spite of the fact that so they got hit. Okay, ve'einachinami sheYisrael lo haya lahem zchut ligael. It would say Bnei Israel don't merit to get out, but look, it's the good time. It's a lucky time. I don't like to use the word lucky because it's not the right time. But
that's what they're saying.
That's what the Egyptians would say. So he said.
But he doesn't say that they would say that. You're adding that. I'm sorry.
No, okay, that's right. That's what he says here. Raki karnes hayashu kua mitzrim, afa pisha kochav tov, ve'ein achinam sheYisrael lo haya lahem zchut.
But the reason I'm saying that is because you're basing it, I think, on the fact that the Egyptians would say something.
He's going to get to that. He's going to get to that in a second. Okay.
But here it doesn't
No,
say
you're
that.
right. You're right. Okay, you're right. You are absolutely right. I am saying it based on what I know what's going to happen. What he's going to say. Okay.
Spoiler alert.
Right. Let's say the Makkah will happen at 12:01. 12:02, who cares, right? And that we know is Mars is a bad, not so good time. Makata Mitzrim einako kachnes, right? The Makkah of the Mitzrim would not be such a miracle. Why? It's bad luck. It's a bad luck time, right? Lefisha kochav hayara, aval hatzalat Yisrael haytanes gadol. Then what would happen? They would say that the fact, then that one of the miracles would be good, which is the fact that Bnei Israel were taken out, right? The fact that they were saved, meaning they're saved from the Makkah, but the Mitzrim weren't getting, at the end of the day, the Mitzrim getting punished at 12:01 or any time after midnight is not a really big, it's not a nace. Right? What he's saying is that the main miracle, he said, at least what our scroll says here, people would say that the main miracle, and that's why I'm saying, people would say that the main miracle of the Makkah Pechor depends on the planet, meaning it's based on the stars, right? So there's no real miracle. One side you could say is, it's not, Bnei Israel don't have any merit, it's just the fact that it's a good luck time. Right? And the second side, you'll say is, the Mitzrayim didn't get punished because it's a nace, it's just a bad luck. They got, there's one nace, on either side of the coin, there's one nace that occurs, but not two. That's what he's trying to prove here. Okay? And since the Makkah occurred during that negative time of Mars, they would be compelled to, they would say, that is, these people would say, that the Jewish people were spared because they had a little bit of merit, but they would say that the Egyptian dying or being punished was because of the time. Meaning it wasn't really, in either way, we say that the time was really the factor and it wasn't Bnei Israel's merit, or we say it wasn't Mitzrayim being punished, if you will, it was just the bad luck. Meaning that one way or other, there's one nace that happens, but not both. Okay, that's what he's setting it up. So, now we can understand about Kavanata Kadosh Baruch Hu Aita, that Kadosh Baruch Hu wanted to do the following. Lakota Mitzrayim beoto regem amash al chatzi alayla. Hashem wanted to hit the Mitzrayim exactly at midnight. Bachatzot. And he's going to answer another reason why Bachatzot, I think, is actually a better reason, but he's going to say this first reason first. And he says, Bachatzot, exactly, Shakochavim ze yotzev, is about what happens. No one asked the question here, but when I learned it the other day, someone asked, what happens at the exact moment when either of them, when they're changing of the guards, right? There's a moment, there's that little bit of time, and that's when Hashem goes, that's when I'm going to do it. Why? Because then no one is in control, right? If you will, there's that moment when they're changing guards.
You can't associate it
with one or the other. And that's when Hashem says, Bachatzot, I'm doing it exactly at Chatzot. And right now he's saying...
It's been a bigger quote-unquote Kiddush Hashem to do it when the Mazal is bad.
Right, that you're right. It would have been to me. Right.
The reason why Chabad should do it.
Anyways, okay.
Shows you.
Like I actually when I first heard about this whole idea of Mars and not making Kiddush, so I asked one of my Chabad friends, says, no, we don't make Kiddush during that time. Absolutely not. Like they were like really, don't do it. Like don't do it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go look it up. So I look at the Shulchan Aruch Harav, and I say Yesh Omrim. It's not even like
You're saying the Iker was that there was no Mafra control.
Exactly, and Hashem says that's the moment. I want to prove to Mitzrayim. I want to have both Nisim. Okay, that's what he's saying. He says, "Ve'en lahem yacholet leitiv la'arav ayeh nes kaful bein b'makata Mitzrayim bein b'atzalat Yisrael." He says, "I want to make the double because then the Mitzrayim will never have a claim to say, oh, it's good luck, it's bad luck." I want to have both. Hashem saying is, I want both. I want a double nace. Again, this is a theme that we'll see. What we see throughout all these parshiot is that the Zera Shimshon always tries to highlight the fact that there's a nace upon nace upon nace of things that happen. And he's showing here is that double nace. What's a double nace? One is that the Mitzrayim get hit very harshly, and the second one is that Bnei Israel gets saved. So it's a nace b'toch nace. He's not just saying it's one nace.
How in the world do they even know when it's...
Yeah, that's a question that I don't have the answer to. I mean, because it's not like they had watches or like they had sundials, but sundials are not exactly right anyway. So
and sometimes don't work at night.
Right, right. They only work so much, and also like I mean, again, maybe the answer is that maybe we have to say is that astrologers are tapped into something that we don't understand. But again, it's a very good question because whether I said midnight, one person's midnight is another person's 3 a.m. When you don't have a watch, right? You don't know how, right? Time doesn't, I know it's 8:16 right now, okay, or 9:16 right now. But at the end of the day, I don't have a watch to tell me the clock and the movement. Anyway, so he says, now we can understand. Now he says, now he's starting to answer his questions. He says this, now if Moshe would have said exactly in night, right?
Well, here's your answer. They claim to know the times.
Right, so they claim to know times, right.
By the way, even, sorry to interrupt you, with Megillat Esther,
Right.
it says Yod
Right.
So there was at least
Awareness of something.
awareness of it, where
Right.
you had special abilities to know the times.
So
Did
it's-
everybody know it? Not necessarily.
Yeah, they didn't know exactly. So they knew, approximately what it is. The fact that you mentioned Megillat Esther is amazing, because not that he's going to mention Megillat Esther here at all. The Or HaChaim HaKadosh mentions, he quotes the Midrash, and then we're going to get to that. He doesn't mention the Midrash. The Or HaChaim mentions the Midrash directly. The Zera Shimshon doesn't mention it, but he hints to it, and or he mentions sort of part of it, and the expanded version of it is in the Or HaChaim HaKadosh. And he says like this. So we'll continue. He says, if Moshe would have said that the Makkah is going to take place exactly at midnight, and the astrologers would have made a mistake, Yomru Mashah Badayu, then they would have said, listen, astrologer is saying it's 12:05, and Moshe says it's exactly midnight. But the astrologers are going to obviously feel like they were correct, and what's going to happen is they're right. It's their, right, exactly. It's one word. His word against theirs. So what did you say? Right? In other words, they're going to say he's a liar because he's going to say that it's a nes kaful. They're going to it's not a nes kaful. You're late, right? Your timing's off, buddy. You can't be a nes kaful, right? Right? From one side, they're going to say, wait a minute, you don't need a nes because on one side or the other, that if their time is right, then it's either bad luck for the Egyptians or good luck for the Jews. But either way, it's not a double nes.
Meaning the ability to time it perfectly.
Right, exactly. The ability to time it perfectly is exactly that. Is what makes Moshe nervous, right? He's nervous because he doesn't want to show that he doesn't want to tell the Mitzrayim, hey, it's exactly the time. Anyway, so he says like this. Right, they'll say that it was in other words, so he's saying this is why Moshe said Bachatzot. This is one answer. There's a second answer which I think is actually a better answer. He says it's Bachatzot. The reason why Moshe tries to be more vague and less specific is in order to make sure that either way, he's saying is, regardless of what time the astrologers say, he's saying is 12:01, 12:05, 11:58, it makes no difference. The double miracle is taking place. And whatever Hashem said, kachatzot, right? Hashem says bachatzot. Sorry, Hashem says exactly at 12 o'clock, or exactly at midnight, more correctly, right? He says exactly at midnight. And I don't want to hear the astrology's claim that one side is the good luck or bad luck. I'm telling you, whether it happens at 12, 12:02, or 11:58, it makes no difference to me, because at the end of the day, the nes is kaful, and Hashem is in control. And you can't claim it to be that it's,
How does that help that time that you just said?
So he says, what he's saying is Moshe doesn't want the Egyptians to make that claim that it's it's one way or another. So he says listen, you're going to claim that the second part of the nes, which is, we said there are two nisim that's supposed to happen. One of the nisim, the Mitzrayim are going to claim it's bad luck or good luck, right? Whatever. And Moshe is saying, no, don't even don't play games with me. I'm telling you, it's going to, whatever time you say it is, that's the time that's the time it was meant to happen. Meaning he's trying to cover his bases because he knows that they're going to start making ta'anot. That's what he says. Okay, so now we say that basically that now that we've explained what's the importance of having the Makkah exactly at midnight, we can understand that
why Moshe couldn't.
Right, exactly. That the Mitzrayim, excuse me, not Bnei Israel, the Mitzrayim would claim that Moshe lied about the time of the Makkah because they wanted to prove that Hashem did not actually perform the miracle. They would just say it's up to the astrology, right? So therefore, therefore, what happens is that he's answered the questions. Now we still have two other questions that remain. One is Moshe about being called why misquote Hashem. Right? We still don't have an answer to the question is why should he misquote Hashem? Hashem said to do one thing. we know that he shouldn't be misquoting Hashem. Whether if he doesn't want to misquote Hashem, just say around midnight without saying Hashem told me to say this, right? Or Hashem said this. Don't even say anything. Just say around midnight will happen. That's all. Moshe would have said it. We've all been happy, and this whole argument would take place. That's question number one, right? And the second question we have is why was Moshe not concerned? I know that your question, but let's say why was he not concerned that the Jewish people might have some sort of say, well, I don't understand that, the Jewish people, we're all concerned about the Egyptians, right? And all of a sudden, the Zohar, he quotes the Zohar, the Zera Shimshon quotes the Zohar, but he says that the Jewish people might also say, listen, that's not what Hashem said. Now, we don't know what the conversation was, but at the end of the day, it's not the right thing to say, Hashem said this and you said that, or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's not right, whether they know or not. Okay?
We had this exact situation, a few months ago, and maybe, I think the answer was maybe for the future.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
Until Rashi comes.
Until Rashi comes, we have no idea, exactly. So maybe that's the answer. Right, maybe that's the answer. Maybe that is the answer. Maybe you have to say is, at the moment, you're right. Maybe at the moment, it doesn't happen.
Actually, it doesn't answer it, because it doesn't say anywhere that Hashem told him what it's exactly Hashem told him.
I mean, it doesn't say anywhere.
We only know from Rashi that Hashem told him exactly.
No, what do you mean?
What is it?
It says,
You said the pasuk said kuchatzos.
that's what Moshe says.
Right, but where does it say that God said at? I might have missed that. It said exactly. God said to him, chatzos olam.
Hold on. Yeah, I'll take it.
Adama, right?
It's not.
Does it say it explicitly?
Vayhi b'chatzi halayla.
Okay.
Right, and it does happen.
Okay.
But it's not like, by the way, but it's not that Hashem said it. It's telling the facts as they are.
Right, hold on.
He's not quoting Hashem. Your question's valid. It's not like it's quoted in a pasuk and Hashem said Va'ani avo.
Thank you.
Right?
Right.
You have to see.
Right.
Let's see. I gotta see this.
So it says kachatzot. Hashem says to Moshe. Moshe says, "Ko amar Hashem kachatzot alayla." Right around machatzot. Now,
Later on.
Right, no, but where's the actual conversation where God says to Hashem? Sorry.
Right. No. Where Hashem says.
Hashem says to Moshe.
Right.
Where does it say?
No, that's it doesn't happen. That's
okay.
okay.
I
So
rest my
okay,
case.
that's okay. Anyway, okay, you're right. By the way, you're not wrong. No one's saying it's wrong. You're just saying is that it doesn't necessarily for the future generation. Let's say for the future generations, we have a question. We know that
It
whether
won't be a question for the future generations.
because you're saying we don't know the conversation. We don't know.
It wasn't until Rashi came along and said that that's what Hashem said, right? If you read that parish, how would you know?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because in the next psukim later it says Vayhi b'chatzi alayla. Exactly at chatzi alayla.
That's not a contradiction.
Legally, it's not a contradiction.
Not a contradiction.
Right. Okay, so
It was fulfilled Moshe's words.
right. So
If I tell you, yesterday I was training to shoot a gun. I said, hit the target. I hit the target.
right.
But, was it the head? Was it the heart? If it was exactly the heart, then I really hit the target.
Right. Okay. Right. Okay. So, anyways, Mazel tov. Anyway, so that's one question. That's by the way. Either which way, we have two. Either which way, we have these two questions that are still remaining. Vafal pichein. He says, even so, Moshe had misquoted. Whether or not, it seems that Moshe somehow misquoted. Let's just say he somehow did. Okay, right? Lo shina devaros HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is where I think this answer, by the way, this part of the answer is better, in my opinion, than the first one. And I'll tell you why. Very, very simply, because it brings us back to what the original story of how this whole took place. Where do we know this whole story of Yetziat Mitzrayim took place originally?
Where?
When did this whole story and this whole thing happen? It started with Brit Ben Abitarim. Right? The whole thing starts with Brit Ben Abitarim. When Hashem promises to Abraham that your children will go into slavery, and then they'll take them out, and you're going to take them out with riches and everything. And he says like this, Lo shinat dvaros HaKadosh. But your claim, by the way, he says Moshe didn't change anything. Right? He said like this, Sharei b'midrash al pasuk vayi b'chatzi alayla. And that's what he's going to quote, and that's what what Dov was saying before. The Orach Chaim quotes the entire thing. He says there were 5 nisim that happened at Chatzi Halayla. Okay, he quotes the Midrash. The Midrash is actually in Shemot Rabbah, and he says Ketiv Makim Dvar Avdo v'Atzat Malachav Yeshlim. He confirms that what he said to his servant and fulfills the counsel of his messengers. V'Ivtiach LaAvraham L'Giol et Benav b'Chatzi Halayla. Hashem promised Abraham that he's going to redeem his children exactly at midnight.
How did he promise that?
Sheivtiach Avram Megol Chatzi Alai. In reference to the fact, okay, when he says it, Moshe Radaf Achar Melachim Lekadesh Moshe Makom. Avraham. This is all based on, if we look at the psukim of Brit Ben Amtarim and the other three Nisim, Orach Chaim HaKadosh mentions it here, Vahi B'Chatzi Alayla, he says, there are five. Right, very good, yes, very good, right, yep, very good. And it says here, see, it says here, he quotes it on Leil Shimurim, the Orach Chaim HaKadosh mentions on Leil Shimurim, but he says there are 5 Nisim that happened at exactly on this night being the night of Makat Pachorot, Yetziat Mitzrayim. He's talking about Leil Shimurim, he's probably talking about Yetziat Mitzrayim. So he says like this, Bimei Avraham, then Sheni B'Mitzrayim, which is this one, 3rd one is Chizkiah, 4th one is Mordecai V'Esther, and the 5th one is the Geula Atidah. That's what he mentions here. Okay, so that's Geula Atidah is going to happen also. Kedusha. That's what Orach Chaim. I'm not arguing.
One second. Hold on a minute. Is there going to be? How is it going to be like one? I don't understand. The Geula, like, how can it be in one moment?
So that's a good question. It's a good process, right?
First of all, Mashiach is going to they say it comes 5, right? He's going to announce himself. I don't know when that's going to happen. Like, all of a sudden he's going to get in front of a reporter and say, "I'm here."
I don't know.
Like, what does it mean? Like,
I don't know. I understand the issue with Mashiach. I don't know yet, but I do know that even if we say it's not going to happen exactly in the moment, it's going to happen at nighttime. Okay, let's just say Lil.
It starts with the Mashiach patch.
Right.
there you go.
Right there you go. Anyway, so he says like this.
Moshe,
Avram Avinu, when he chased away the 4 kings, it was exactly at night of Pesach. It was the night of Pesach. Okay, and in order to do it, what was the whole goal of running after Lot? Like he didn't have to run after Lot. What was the reason why he did? Why? Yeah, but why did he have to run after?
Nitzotz Mashiach.
Looked alike or something.
No, what are the?
Nitzotz Mashiach.
Well, part of it, but what's the real reason? It's because he wanted to be Mekadesh Shem Shemayim. It's just because he wanted. He didn't want to be Mechalel. We learned about it, and at that time we said that Avram didn't want to disgrace Hashem. That Lot, who looked like Avram or was cousin with Avram or whatever it is, he didn't want to be Mechalel Shem Shemayim. So Hashem says to Avraham, because of what you did at midnight, exactly that night, I'm going to make sure your children are also going to be saved at midnight on that night. Okay? And then, by the way, if you look at the Zera Shimshon, things that unfortunately we don't say as much anymore, he says, V'chein apayit amar, right? When we say, it's not. This is Haggadah Shel Pesach. It says, V'amartem zevach Pesach. What do we say? It says, Gilita le'ezrachi chatzot le'el Pesach. He says, exactly. So you revealed yourself to Avraham at the midnight of Pesach, and Moshe k'amar ko amar kachatzot halayla. So what is it?
Referencing
exactly. I happen to like this answer so much better. He says to Moshe never really was misguiding the truth. Or he's saying is...
He's saying like all the other chatzot.
Exactly. He's saying it's kachatzot, like that chatzot. Like that chatzot. Right. We think it's kachatzot, around chatzot. But what is kach? Right. Like, it's as if this.
All the other ones.
Right. So I like that answer because that makes sense. It's great. Okay, that makes a good reference. And then we don't have to get out of the whole problem of Moshe's a liar, Moshe's not a liar. Right? He says, very good. He says, Kavanato ayta l'rega chatzot laila mamash, k'mo shayach chatzot laila sheivtiach l'Avraham. Just like the midnight that Hashem promised Abraham that you, because of what you did, I'm going to redeem you, and Hashem promised him every other time, or 5 times at least, your children are going to be saved at night. So too, so Moshe says, Kachatzot alayim, just like it happened then, it's going to happen today. Right? Saves all the problems. And now he says, so he wasn't telling Paro, Moshe wasn't telling Paro around Chatzot, right? He was going to be right exactly at midnight. He's just giving reference, saying is, hey Mitzrim, remember, go back a couple of years, and when Avraham Avinu was promised by Hashem that it's going to happen at midnight, so too this is going to happen too at midnight. Now, now that's what he says, and that now also strengthens, even if we don't say whether Bnei Israel knew or not. Moshe is telling Bnei Israel, listen. And this is why Moshe was never nervous about telling Bnei Israel, because he says, Kachatzot halayla, he says, hey, remember our forefather? Our forefather was saved at midnight, and so too we're going to be saved at midnight. So whether he, right, and that's why he there was never ever this confusion. Now he has this math. It's a little bit of math, which is not my strong point, but the Chumash, the Torah says how many years were they enslaved?
210.
210.
Okay, so then I have a question for you.
400, 430.
There we go.
That bothered me. I've been thinking about this for the last 5 minutes.
Yeah. Also, it bothers me all the time. And then when I was learning it, I was trying to figure out, I'm like, 400, 430. But the Chumash is straightforward. The Torah is straightforward. It says 430.
I know. I've seen that for the last 10 minutes. Like, how are you going to explain that?
Right, so now he says, okay, so this is a good question. So he says, V'akadosh Baruch Hu ratza shetiyeh ha'makah davka b'chatzi halayla. Okay, he says that Hashem wanted the makkah exactly at midnight. Why? L'horot shenishlam ha'ketz. Right, to indicate that the time, whether we say it's 400 or 430, irrelevant of what it is, so that the Mitzrim should after Nigzar Galut ben Abitarim, even though we say that during Brit ben Abitarim there was 400 years, right? Hayah Chatzot Laila Mamash. It was precisely at midnight of the 15th of Nisan when that happened, right? At that moment, what is he saying? He's saying is, when I promised to Abraham at midnight that your children are going to be in Mitzrayim or some foreign land, let's say not Mitzrayim, from that moment, 12, right, at 12:00, he says it, so it has to be at 12:00, 400 years later, to make sure that it happens. That's what he's saying. He's saying it, Punkt, as they say.
What are some of the explanations they're counting from the Brit?
Right, so it says, I'm looking right here, looking at our article, it says, Hashem said to Avram, that your 400 years. Rashi there says it's going to be 400 years, started 30 years after the Brit B'Turim. That's the 400 years. Right. But if you want to add 30, how do you add 30? He says, if you add 30, it's basically the time of Yitzchak's birth. Meaning he says, the counting starts at 400. 400 counts if you start from Brit B'Turim, right? If you want, he says the other way around. I'm sorry, the other way around. Excuse me.
This doesn't work at all.
Right.
Nobody was even none of them were even born yet.
Right. So he says 400 years. Either we say 400 years starts at Yitzchak's birth, that's when the count starts, or we say it's 430 years before Yitzchak's birth. Either which way,
they weren't in Egypt, so it doesn't.
Right. Either way, the length of at the end of the day, the length of the galut is sometimes referred to, and this is what I happen to find. I don't want to say funny, but it's unique that sometimes the galut is referred to as 400 years, and sometimes referred to as 430 years, which it proves itself. We're just saying is, whatever the case may be, Hashem was trying to make a point. What's the point? Hashem is trying to say is that from the moment I promised Abraham that your children will go into galut and they will have a geula, I want to make sure that the moment that I start the count starts as soon as I said that, and it won't finish until the 400 or 430 years, regardless of what the number is, until that moment ends. Meaning, I'm telling you, it's that full cycle, right? There's not a moment. It's not a moment early and not a moment later.
It's supposed to be 400 years, right?
It's 400 or 430.
No, the decree was how many years? Literally 400, right? 400 years.
Yeah, but that's what he says in Brit Beit HaMitarim. No, but here it says.
I know. I was about to give an answer.
Yeah, that's right.
You know how you say mitzvah kukulo,
right.
You have 5 and 15 or 5 and a minute.
Right.
So half, you have your 210 is like your past half.
Right, exactly.
So mitzvah kukulo.
Right, it could be. Yeah, that's a very easy way to say it. But either way, regardless if you say 400, 430, because 400 if you look at 400, that's where it starts in Brit HaMitarim. It says Arba'amot Shana. But in this week's Parshat, it says 430 years. So that's where the kind of, I don't want to say conflict is, but again, it's just there's a machloket. Anyway, so he says, what he's saying is, the problem is that the Mitzrim are going to have a problem with the fact that it's exactly at midnight. Why? And the 400, and then they were going to say is that the time being completed, which they're going to always say that their time was not up yet. Meaning, what are the Mitzrim going to say is, hey, it's not time yet.
Galut's not over
The
yet.
Galut's not over yet. So if the Galut's not over yet, then we're still owed some time. Right? That's why Hashem says, no. V'imaya omer b'chatzot, and had Moshe said exactly at midnight, as Hashem told him to say, Vayu toim mitztagni paro, and the astrologers that had made a mistake in their calculation, right? They did not exactly, hayu omrim shemoshe badayu, right? Because what happened? Because they would have said,
Too early.
it's too early. So that's why Hashem says,
1 minute.
right, yeah, go ahead.
I have an issue.
Go for it.
I mean,
Go for it. Go.
please forgive me, but a lot. He does this a lot, where he puts. It's like how in the heck did they know? Like he answers up like they would have thought. They would. Who told them?
Yeah, that's a good question.
He does it all the time.
Yeah,
It
right.
bothers me.
Yeah, so
like the Mitzvah didn't know. Like
Yeah.
oh, they're counting. Like somebody made a broadcast, put it in a paper. We the Jews are going to be here for X amount
By the
of years.
way,
How in the heck did they know?
I'll tell you very simply.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not by the Zera Shimshon, by the way. Almost every, it's not, we have.
Okay, it's not the Midrash says.
A Midrash, and B,
Okay.
the Torah, it was known that the Avram Avinu, the Brit Ben Avtarim was a known fact. It wasn't something that the Mitzrayim said, oh, we don't know about this. This was a known fact that Hashem told. These are things that were told. It was clear. It's clear, but if you look through the Midrashim, it's clear.
You know, we could put something on the internet and the whole world knows.
Exactly.
Well, they had newspapers broadcasting. You're making a big
Yeah, but with the
statement. How
Marcus,
the
we were
Mitzvah-
like prime news. We were
Right,
prioritizing
exactly.
everything
But-
we did. Like you see with Trump right now,
Yeah, but we're talking about
everything he does.
Specifics.
But they knew
So this
that-
Moshe
How do
is
you know
like
they
the Trump
knew?
of that time.
How do you know
after.
that they knew
So
that the
everything he
Jews were
does
supposed to be
says
400 years?
Like Moshe.
400 years. Hashem
wishes.
told Avram, and Avram passed it down generations. It's not like
He told the Jews.
he told the Jews, right?
Yeah, but the Jews are like going around Mitzvah. Hey, we're going to be here for 400 years. It's okay. Don't worry.
Yeah, that's what.
We're not leaving.
I'm telling you that's the problem. That is exactly
So the Jews are telling the Egyptians, "Don't worry, we're not leaving. We have to be here another 200 years."
no. But what does Hashem say? Hashem says, "I'm telling you, it's 400 years to the minute."
I know, but the Mitzvah can't have a time up because they didn't know.
But I think they did know. Okay, I just think that they did. Okay. Anyways, good question. I'm not arguing with you. I think it's a good question. It said that is in the note here. One of the notes in the article, it says here, the Egyptians could say, as proof, that the 430 galut of 430 years did not start at the Brit Ben Abtarim. They would claim that the galut starts when the Jewish people come to Mitzrayim. Like you said, very good. It's a very easy. You take off. You just lopped off 200 years by saying, listen, it doesn't start Brit Ben Abtarim, right? It starts when they walked in the door, right? The first time they walked into Mitzrayim.
Right,
That's when
but
it starts
saying,
counting.
but saying exactly Chatzos isn't going to answer anything for either. It's not going to answer anything for them. Because in their mind, you guys get back here, you're not supposed to leave for another 200 years.
Right. So the point is Hashem.
So saying Chatzos doesn't mean anything.
No, hold on a second. So Adain don't understand. Okay, so it would say that the time did not complete yet, as evidenced by the fact that the makat didn't occur exactly a minute as it did. Right, Mishum Hachi Amar Kachatzot Shalol Lehem Asod, and not to reveal to them the secret that the makat would occur exactly 430 years. Now, what are you going to say? You're going to say is the Mitzrayim didn't know.
Well, even if they didn't know,
They're going to say,
Chatzos is not going to mean anything to them.
well, sure it is, because they're going to say is, wait a minute, you owe us some time.
Right.
They're going to say, well, you owe us some time.
Right.
And Hashem says, no, your clock is wrong. That's what Hashem is telling you. What the point here is, and maybe I'll ask you.
How is this coming
No, this
with
is
Chatzos?
historically
How's this
a
coming
reality.
into Chatzos?
You have that whole Gemara Megillah where they try to calculate the time of the end of the Golis for the Jews so they could use the Kalim and all the different kings. And
That's
then,
another point. How did
I'm
they
just
know
saying.
exactly? Well, okay, that might have
again
been.
and again, they made calculations. They cared about our history because
Right,
we were so impactful on their life.
That's exactly. That's what I believe. Again,
Okay, but one second. Am I understanding that the Chatzos, the Cha, is going to answer them up somehow?
no. So what the Zera Shimshon is saying is follows, and maybe I'll summarize it this way so you can understand. What he's trying to prove is that the reason why Moshe was said kachatzot and not bachatzot, however you slice it, he was obviously saying something different than what Hashem said. There's no question about that. But how we argue it, whatever it is, that's point one. Point what he's trying to say is Moshe was trying to prove to the Mitzrayim, saying is, I don't want to hear your claim. It's good luck, good time, bad time, whatever it is. Hashem has something in mind. And that time of Hashem, the time that Hashem mentions that it's going to be at Chatzot, it's going to be Chatzot. Okay? And now, the reason why I happen to be, Mordecai Holtz, likes the reason of bringing it back to the Chatzot of Avram Avinu is because then you could say that's where it all began. Like, it starts from Avram Avinu. Avram was told 400 years. Okay, you don't want to take 400, you want to take 210. It makes no difference. At the end of the day, I want you, Bnei Israel, to remember, and the Mitzrayim to remember, that just like Hashem told Avram that it's going to happen at Chatzot then, or it happened, the miracle starts, the counting starts there, or it doesn't happen, I saved them at night, just like it happened then, it's going to happen at night, and it's going to happen exactly at that moment, so that the clock it's a full circle. Now, what do we learn from all of this? And this is what he ends at the end of the day. He says, "Aval lefia emet dat Moshe hayta lomar shetiyeh b'chatzot mamash umashmaut kachatzot koto chatzot shel Avraham." So he's saying is he ends his Torah by saying is whatever we say, at the end of the day, the connection is that Moshe was not saying something vague. He was saying is there was nothing to do with kachatzot, like maybe chatzot, around chatzot, whatever. He's saying is I'm referring back to the chatzot of Avram Avinu because I want Bnei Israel to see that what Avram was promised, Hashem is fulfilling His promise now. Meaning he's saying it's a full circle. Right? Sometimes it's hard for us to see that circle when we're looking at we're in the middle of it. Yeah. Middle of all, you can't see the circle. You can't even see anything.
Bigger
right?
picture's hard to.
So that's what. Yeah. Yes.
And I think I've seen in Zera Shimshon this idea of like, yeah, you're right. Hashem said 400 years, and maybe you got out at 210, but like it's got to be a full circle, so you're still going to need to pay for your crimes.
Yeah.
You got a good deal,
right?
But like me and you are still paying
Probate.
off
Yeah.
190.
Yeah, so exactly. So that's right. That was last week. Actually, I think it was last week already. Bnei Israel were nervous about that. Bnei Israel were nervous.
Yes.
So they last week we said that Bnei Israel were nervous. They're like, wait a minute, we're getting off 190 years early, so we don't want to get out early because that means what's going to happen is our children, our grandchildren, our great grandchildren, and many children. We don't want that.
It's like that $1 trillion debt, just kicking it down the road.
Right, they're pushing it down. They're pushing the deal down, right? We could make that kind of correlation to today's day, right? Like, why should I'll push the ball down the court a little bit longer?
Yeah.
But Bnei Israel actually last week, Bnei Israel said we don't want that to happen. We'd rather be here. It says it. Zera Shimshon was saying is I'd rather be then. I'd rather do the work now, so then and not have our kids suffer, right? But he says here, and this is what I think is the message here is that when Hashem says it's going to be, it's going to be. And Moshe is trying to teach the Mitzrayim exactly that. And finally, at the last Makkah, maybe they finally get the point that what Hashem says is the key, right? That's what he's trying to say.
By the way, you could look at it another angle.
Yeah.
Is if you think about Yaakov going to Lavan,
right?
And even the Haggadah talks about it.
Yeah, Lavan, right?
So, really, the Galut started with Yaakov.
Right. So that's already
with Yitzchak or Yaakov.
Right.
What I'm trying to say is, we're looking at it.
Right.
Zaracha is actually Yitzchak or Yaakov.
Right. Exactly.
What?
Not Golan Mitzrayim.
Okay, but
what he's saying is Eretz Lo Lahem starts with the Ger Yezer Achab Eretz Lo Lahem. The Ger Eretz Lo Lahem, he's saying is whether you're in Mitzrayim or you're in Lavan's territory or anywhere that's not Eretz Yisrael, it's starting. Meaning you're a foreigner in a foreign land. Where that
if you're in 5 towns,
right?
It doesn't say specifically Abdus, they're going to be slaves.
No, it says Avadum v'Inuotam ve'Eretz Lo Lahem. I mean they're going to be Avadum. No, but again we learned this Zera Shimshon a few weeks ago.
What he's saying doesn't include that.
No, but he's saying is that they're going to be. But remember, we learned that there's 2 parts to it. There's 2 parts to the Zera Shimshon mentions it 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. He mentions that the Avadum v'Inuotam is 2. It's 2 part. Ger Eretz Lo Lahem is 1 part of it, and if they don't follow mitzvot, then there'll be Avadum. Then they'll have the Avadum. That was when Levi and Shmuel we learned it. So he says, why was Levi not included? Levi wanted to make sure that the whole point was that he says that everyone was going to be in Galut. Galut is clear, and there you could say Eretz Lo Lahem. They were foreigners. So foreigners, you could say they were foreigners in their land from Yitzchak, right? From Yitzchak down to Yaakov, then Yosef, whatever it is. Avadum, right? That is a second. In other words, that's a second part. That's a second.
Excuse me, Yaakov worked Lavan.
Right, Yaakov worked Lavan too. He wasn't
giving up.
No, you're right. In other words, they weren't in their hometown. They weren't there. They didn't have the home field advantage. They lost. Right at the end of the day, we knew it was going to happen. It was just a matter of time.
However, Yaakov was one singular and said Yovdu Tam, plural.
Okay, but anyway,
It's going to be our bit.
Well, yeah, we're going to go one last second. One last minute. But the point here is what I think. Even if we understand everything, what Moshe was trying to say to Mitzrayim and to Bnei Israel in general, he's trying to say is to everyone. He's saying is that Hashem has a plan, and whether if you've disregarded all the other makot to say that Hashem was there or Hashem was not there, whatever it is. at the end of the day, Hashem has a plan. You have to finally realize that Hashem knows what time, and He has a bigger picture, and we're not looking at it. In the Mitzrayim, we're not looking at that bigger picture at that moment, and therefore, Moshe was trying to say is just like it happened in Abraham, and it happened and will happen in future times at night. So too, Hashem has a plan when it will happen exactly.
I'd like to just remind everyone.
I did already.
Pay box group. There's no minimum or maximum. Anyone who wants to just contribute.
There's no maximum?
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have any gaps.
So just feel free. We post it on the group. Just help us with the.